The wait is finally over. James Gunn and Peter Safran's DCU is finally here. The project was first announced in October of 2022, and most fans have been hyped since learning about the initial slate of films and shows. It's a new dawn of justice. I'm just kidding, Snyder fans. You're good sports.
Merry Christmas, lizards!
The first official DCU project is out now, and shocking absolutely nobody, it's a team-up show featuring a ragtag group of oddballs called the Creature Commandos. Now, I know I've seen this formula somewhere else, but the films all escape me at the moment. Creature Commandos is based after the events of Peacemaker Season 1, and while the whole what is and isn't canon from the DCEU time period isn't super clear, we know the show sees Amanda Waller put together a team of supernatural characters in the DCU. Our goal is to get a recap of the Creature Commandos as a team out shortly, but to start out we wanted to highlight a character that I think will end up becoming a fan favorite, G.I. Robot. G.I. Robot is a character that immediately piqued my interest because frankly I've never really read a lot of monster or war comics, so that being said, today I bring you the complete history of G.I. Robot. G.I. Robot made his first appearance in Star-Spangled War Stories 101 from 1961, written by Robert Knider and drawn by Ross Andru. There are multiple incarnations of G.I. Robot, and most of them have only a handful of comic appearances and kind of overlap in terms of story content, so let's run through every single damn one of them. During World War II, US scientists created the first G.I. Robot, designed to replace live soldiers on the battlefield and reduce human casualties. The robot, nicknamed Joe, was programmed to follow basic commands like marching, firing a gun, responding to military slang, and smoking sweet cigs. Well, maybe not that last one, but it probably would have been cool. Joe's first test mission was a pretty standard mission for World War II. Alongside another soldier named Mac, G.I. Robot was sent to infiltrate and destroy an enemy weapon depot on Dinosaur Island. Ah yes, the famous World War II battle site of Dinosaur Island. You really can't turn on a World War II documentary without hearing about Dinosaur Island. It's like an iconic location for World War II. During these missions, fellow human G.I. Mac began to form a bond with Joe. Afterward, Joe was upgraded with a chest panel that allowed Mac to command it using special types of light signals, including a flashlight, which proved crucial in a mission where they fought the goddamn Loch Ness Monster, and another mission where they had to defend against dinosaurs and a giant Japanese-created G.I. Robot warrior of their own. The original G.I. Robot was only featured in 3 comics, however a second model named Mac later briefly appeared in a single comic, Star-Spangled War Stories 125. This issue continues the common tropes of soldiers feeling uneasy about their new robotic companion. Now Mac is special to me because he sacrifices himself by blowing himself up to save his friend Reed from a Tyrannosaurus. Reed is the name of my firstborn son, so obviously this means I will be buying the first military-grade Tesla robot that hits the market, naming him Mac, and assigning him to guard my children's lives. So those are the first 2 G.I. robots, and they're kind of remnants of the past. So let's get into the military-issued meat and potatoes of the G.I. Robot character that we know today. The majority of the appearances of G.I. Robot are the 3rd and 4th incarnation of the character, nicknamed Jake 1 and Jake 2. Jake 1, short for Jungle Automated Killer Experiment, was the first. However, the character of Jake within the show Creature Commandos has a clear number 2 written on its helmet, indicating that more than likely this character is Jake 2, the second incarnation that did eventually join the Creature Commandos. Now, you might be thinking to yourself, why don't you just cover Jake 2 in this video? Well, Garrick would not let me, so I'm covering Jake 1 as well. Jake 1 was first featured in Weird War Tales 101 and featured the reintroduction of the Creature Commandos. Many of the stories that take place in this time period are collectively called the War That Time Forgot, as it's unclear how canonical these events are to the greater DC universe, as well as the places and creatures, like dinosaurs, aren't widely reported on later in DC history. Jake 1 was created again by a military think tank and assigned to combat in the South Pacific Ocean, this time under the command of a Marine named Sergeant Coker, who, much like the original companion Mac, was also skeptical of the non-verbal military android. Coker is assigned to showing Jake the ropes, and the robot appears to respond to his commands. While awkward at first, Jake proves himself to Coker by standing up to a surprise assault featuring a tank, and managing to carry the wounded Marine all the way back to the camp despite having a busted control panel. Slowly but surely, the robot earns his respect, and Coker eventually actually puts his own life in harm's way by jumping on a grenade blast to save Jake. Coker is sent to the hospital to recover, and Jake is ordered to erase his memory banks for reassignment. Instead, Jake goes AWOL and dives into the ocean after the PT boat that Coker was on to try to continue to protect his friend. He never makes it back to Coker though, because along the way, Jake comes across the Creature Commandos, locked in battle with the goddamn Loch Ness Monster again, who Jake blasts with a rocket launcher, earning him an honorary spot on the team. Jake and the Commandos are nearly destroyed when they are abducted by the... Hold on, let me check my notes, this can't be right. Android descendants of Atlantis, yes, you heard that correctly, the now robotic android descendants of Atlantis were planning on launching a war against humanity and other supernatural beings that had threatened him in the past. And they may have gotten away with it, had it not been for Jake, who sacrifices himself to save the rest of the Creature Commandos by blowing up the Atlantis II craft. This prompts Creature Commando member Medusa to question if during his brief time alive, you can't see me making air quotes, but I'm doing it, Jake had indeed formed a soul. A few weeks after Jake 1 was destroyed, they created his successor named, wait for it, Jake 2. Back in the South Pacific, the Japanese unveiled their own samurai robot, Krakow, who dominates an entire platoon. On the opposite side of the island, Jake 2 takes a couple minutes to get online, but once he's brought online, he meets up with a unit that's about to engage with Japan's own samurai robot. Krakow immediately attacks Jake 2, cutting his head off, but despite being robo-decapitated, Jake 2 picks up his head and beats the brakes off the samurai bot, using it like a wrecking ball. Following the victory, Jake 2 is sent to Dinosaur Island, where he meets up with Jake 1's original commander, Sergeant Coker. During the next few missions, Coker and Jake become pretty close, with Coker even sitting by Jake's bedside after he's heavily damaged in battle. Yes, they actually put the robot in a hospital bed, I don't know why. Later in Weird War Tales 116, Jake even gets his own sidekick in the form of robotic canine named Cap, short for Computerized Automatic Patrol Dog. Yes, that would spell CAPTA. But Coker thinks that's a stupid name, I agree with him, so they drop the extra D. The second Jake's final appearance is actually pretty weird, but following the cancellation of Weird War Stories, the final issue attempted to loosely wrap up a bunch of Creature Commando stories along with Jake. They were sentenced to be executed for having disobeyed orders in a previous mission, but their sentence was commuted at the last second, and instead they were assigned to pilot an intercontinental ballistic missile headed to Berlin to kill Hitler, which would have killed them anyway. However, the rocket misfires and the Creature Commandos ended up in outer space. Jake and the others were believed to have died during the mission, but according to the DC Encyclopedia, of everybody on board, we know that Jake 2 somehow lived all the way until the 31st century, but even that's a bit sketchy because that reality was wiped out from existence in one of DC's 400 crisis events. This model of Jake also is used elsewhere within DC continuity at various times. For example, during the Brightest Day storyline, an event that saw the White Entity of Light return a number of deceased DC characters back to the land of living, we saw the return of the Creature Commandos, and fighting alongside of them was a large army of GI robots, all based off the Jake model. Additionally, during Final Crisis, which absolutely was not the Final Crisis, we see a version of Jake 2 fighting alongside heroes, indicating that at some point some version of Jake's continuity was restored and he came out blasting. Next up, we have Jake 6.1. This version was only featured briefly in 2 issues of the late 2000s series Checkmate, making his debut in issue 24. And really, it's more like one issue because his first appearance was on the last page of issue 24, so basically everything that happens here happens in issue 25. Jake 6.1 is part of a team of Elite Task Force X operatives codenamed Rooks, after the chess piece of the same name. Jake 6.1 is codenamed Delta Rook. Housed in a new advanced body but using the same World War II era programming, this Jake model is a scout and helps block the mental abilities of Starro from the team. He's also the only Jake model that responds back to commands at this point, which was a unique trait that the others had not possessed. This mission saw the Rooks assigned to killing a group of superpowered infants to help prevent a potentially world-ending scenario, but the final shot of the book confirms that they actually rescued the infants instead, proving that they may be soldiers, but not monsters. And the last Jake model featured is the mainstream DC Universe model of Jake, simply named Jake again. Making his debut in Men of War number 8, this version of Jake was created by Dr. Robert Crane during World War II for the Japanese under torture, and while Jake was initially sent to kill Agent Frankenstein, Dr. Crane built in an override that switched Jake's allegiance back to the Allies. Jake then went on to become specifically partnered with Frankenstein, and the two went on a series of missions fighting various monsters and robots while working for the Superhuman Advanced Defense Executive, otherwise known as SHADE. And that, my little Creature Commandos, is about it for the complete history of every version of GI Robot that exists. There are a few Elseworlds versions that I didn't cover, but I feel like this video captures the actual GI robots from the mainstream DC history, and we don't really need to cover the other ones. They're all just recaps of stuff with minor twists on it. I hope you enjoyed this video, but we want to know what other Creature Commando characters you want us to dive into next. We already have a video on Weasel, so don't tell me to make that because I already made it, so check it out already if you need something else to watch right now. This has been Nick with Key Issues. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. Remember to like and subscribe and do all that other crap that YouTubers ask you to do. Thanks again for watching, and remember the motto, GI Robot over everything.